Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving deep into the explosive ending of Nobody 2, the brand new action sequel starring Bob Odenkirk as Hutch Mansell. If you thought the first Nobody was a wild ride, this one raises the stakes even higher, mixing brutal action with emotional family drama. But beyond the carnage and dark humor, Nobody 2 leaves us with a finale that both closes Hutch's latest bloody chapter and opens the door for another potential sequel. So grab some popcorn, because we're about to break down every detail of how this ending plays out, who survives, what it means for Hutch's family, and how it sets up Nobody 3. And of course, spoiler warning from here on out. If you haven't seen the movie yet, you might want to come back later. Quick recap of the story, leading to the ending. To really understand the ending, let's rewind and set the stage. In Nobody 2, Hutch is once again pulled into danger while simply trying to take his family on what should have been a peaceful summer vacation. The Mansells decide to visit Plummerville, a quirky, run-down theme park that is filled with carnival rides, creepy mascots, and, as it turns out, a sinister criminal underbelly. Hutch, despite promising himself and his wife Becca that he'd stay out of trouble, can't resist when he sees injustice. And one small act of defense for his daughter snowballs into a deadly confrontation with corrupt local authorities and a ruthless crime boss named Lindina, played by Sharon Stone. The further Hutch digs, the more he realizes this is not just small-time corruption. It's a full-blown smuggling ring that has its claws in the town. By the time we reach the final act, Hutch, his wife Becca, his father David, and his brother Harry are all dragged into a fight for survival. The climax explained. The climax of Nobody 2 takes place back in the theme park, which turns into a giant battleground filled with makeshift traps, weaponized carnival rides, and explosions waiting to happen. Hutch faces wave after wave of enemies, showing once again that even though he tries to live the quiet suburban life, his skills as an auditor, a deadly government agent, never went away. Meanwhile, Becca proves she's far from a passive character, taking matters into her own hands and showing that she can fight alongside her husband when pushed to the limit. Harry and David also get their moments to shine, with Christopher Lloyd's character reminding us that even at his age, he's still a dangerous man when family is on the line. The action is brutal, chaotic, and creative, leaning into the series' darkly comedic tone. But the real turning point comes when Lindina finally faces Hutch's family head-on. How Lindina is defeated. Lindina is portrayed as a cold, calculating villain, and she brings both brains and brutality to the table. But her downfall comes not from Hutch alone. It's actually a family effort. During the final showdown, Becca steps up in a big way. While Hutch is busy dismantling the last of Lindina's crew and fighting off Abel, the corrupt sheriff, Becca manages to land a perfectly timed tranquilizer shot on Lindina, temporarily taking the crime boss out of commission. Just when it looks like the family may not make it out alive, David, Hutch's father, who had been injured earlier and even appeared unconscious, comes back for one final heroic moment. He detonates explosives rigged around the theme park, obliterating Lindina and her remaining henchmen in a fiery finale. This not only gives David a powerful redemption moment, but also cements the Mansells as a unit that fights together. It's a brutal but fitting end for a villain who underestimated the wrong family. Aftermath and interrogation scene. After the dust settles and the park is nothing more than smoldering ruins, the Mansells are, of course, taken into police custody. At first, it looks like Hutch and Becca may finally face consequences for their actions, and the movie builds suspense around whether they'll be exposed. But in classic Nobody fashion, Hutch's shadowy government connections step in. Just like in the first film, where his debts with the Russian mafia were covered by his handler known as the Barber, Hutch is quietly released. The film never outright tells us who ordered Hutch and Becca's release, but the strong implication is that it's the Barber pulling strings once again, making sure his best agent isn't tied up in the legal red tape. The authorities don't press charges, and Hutch walks away free, though now even more indebted to his handler. The message is clear. Hutch may want to be a family man, but the government won't let him go that easily. The family and final vacation video scene. The movie doesn't end on just explosions and interrogations. It brings things back to the heart of the story, Hutch's family. In the final moments, the Mansells sit down together and watch a vacation visual album, a sort of digital scrapbook of their trip. But now the footage is edited to include their newest and somewhat unexpected family members, Lindina's dog and the wolf dog from the park, both of whom survived the chaos. It's a darkly funny but also oddly wholesome ending. Despite everything, the family remains together, stronger than ever, and even a little bigger, thanks to their new pets. It also reinforces one of the film's main themes, that Hutch isn't just fighting for survival, he's fighting for his family's future. They may never live a completely normal life, but they're united, and that bond is their greatest weapon. The themes of the ending. On a deeper level, Nobody 2 uses this ending to highlight Hutch's struggle with duality. He wants to be a good father and husband, but he can't shut off the dangerous part of himself, the side that thrives in chaos and violence. The fact that Becca becomes more involved in the fighting this time around shows that she's starting to accept who Hutch really is. She's not just tolerating it anymore. She's stepping into his world. The ending also sets up an interesting dynamic for their son, Brady. Throughout the movie, we see Hutch trying to convince him to be better than his old man, to not fall into the same violent patterns. Brady shows mercy during a fight, proving there's hope for him. But that moral tug-of-war is far from over, and a future sequel could easily explore whether Hutch's children follow his path or carve out their own. How it sets up Nobody 3. So, what does this ending mean for a potential Nobody 3? The biggest setup lies in Hutch's relationship with the barber. Hutch is still essentially an asset, forced to keep working off his debt through dangerous missions. This leaves the door wide open for the next movie to throw Hutch into an entirely new situation, possibly international in scope, or maybe even tied directly to his past. There's also fertile ground in exploring Becca's origins and why she's so capable under pressure. Some fans even speculate she might have her own history with intelligence work. On top of that, David's past as an agent could be further explored, giving us flashbacks or new revelations about how Hutch and Harry were raised. And let's not forget the wolf dog and Lindina's pet. The quirky addition of these animals could signal a continuation of the franchise's mix of violence and dark humor. In other words, Nobody 2 doesn't just close the chapter. It cracks the door wide open for Hutch to return. In the end, Nobody 2 gives us everything fans wanted. Brutal fight scenes, over-the-top set pieces, and a core emotional story about a man torn between his family and his violent instincts. The final explosion at the theme park and Hutch's quiet release from custody serve as a perfect encapsulation of what this series is all about. A man who will never be free of his past, but who will always fight to protect the people he loves. Whether Universal decides to greenlight Nobody 3 will depend on box office performance, but the seeds have clearly been planted. If this sequel taught us anything, it's that Hutch Mansell might want peace and quiet, but trouble will always find him, and honestly, we wouldn't want it any other way.